Greetings, and welcome to Roman of the Empire. I am your host, Roman. Normally, this time of year, we'd be getting excited about the upcoming Doctor Who Christmas special. But it's this year, and it was last year, and the year before it, and the year before that, and the year before that. Under the guidance of Chris Chibnall, there is no Doctor Who special, Christmas special. There's a holiday special. Usually it's a New Year's special. It's not Christmas. Why is that important? Because it's Christmas. It's not New Year's. Christmas is a special day, and it's a special day for a good part of the world. And Chibnall doesn't care because he's Chris Chibnall. But what we are going to talk about today is an interesting article that Mrs. of the Empire forwarded me from the Federalist, of all places, talking about the current state and hopefully the future state of Doctor Who, specifically regarding, well, the Chibnall disaster, but more importantly and more hopefully, the return of Russell T. Davies, the man who brought Doctor Who back from the grave. So we're going to cover just parts of this article, and then I'm going to editorialize as I go through the article. So this is, as I said, from the Federalist. And Peter Pischke, who I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was the author of this article, and it is very good. I recommend you read it for yourself if you want to read it without my editorial parts. So it begins. Doctor Who is dead. Ratings haven't been this low since the morbid 1980s. And if you'll remember, the mid-1980s was not a good time for Who. Really certainly after the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker left, and you had the Fifth Doctor come in, was the slide, although it still wasn't terrible, Peter Davison, the Fifth Doctor. And then it got progressively worse, though any of that compared to now is genius. But, so that's where we are now. Ratings haven't been this low since the morbid 1980s. The Doctor is on life support, thanks to the BBC's incessant diversity mandates, executive producer Chris Chibnall, his retcons, and lazy pomposity of the first female Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. But there is hope, and that is where Russell T. Davies comes into the mix. So the show's first run, 1963 to 1989, like I said, you had a lot of good years, and then you had a lot of not good years. Petered out after its popularity waned, and the BBC felt it was unprofitable. Remember this part. We're going to revisit it in a different time. Then it would take almost 20 years until Russell T. Davies revived the series in 2005 with a weathered Christopher Eccleston, who I loved as the first Doctor. And then David Tennant took up the role a year later. And for the next decade, the show became the most popular in the United Kingdom and beloved around the world. Until 2017. Wah, wah, wah. When the BBC got tired of executive producer Christopher Moffat, who replaced Russell T. Davies and was basically the run for Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor and through Peter Capaldi's close as the 12th Doctor. So they moved Moffat out because they were tired of Moffat despite his reasonably successful run, and brought in Broadchurch showrunner Chris Chibnall and gave him complete control of the series. And Chibnall, of course, agreed on the condition that Broadchurch actress Jodie Whittaker became the first female Doctor. And I'd like to, I'm editorializing now, the idea of the first female Doctor isn't that big of a deal. It was really the who and how they did it. And they didn't do it well, especially when you're making such a major change to a show that's had this established character for such a long time. Again, it didn't need to be this way. There was Olivia Colman, who I've talked about before, and who many other people have talked about, would have been ideal for this role. However, under the guidance of Chibnall, it still would not have worked. You still would have had the shit show of modern Doctor Who, and that's unfortunate. But it all goes, I mean, really, writing and acting. I mean, that's what the business is. But if you don't have, like, Peter Capaldi was a brilliant actor, and he did a lot with some not particularly good scripts, particularly in season 10 and the tail end of season 9. So, objectively bad. The ratings in Who are in the stinker, as he says in the article, except for the pilot episode, which was due to booming novelty views. That's, you know, it's new, it's fresh. What's it going to be? And then the ratings are in the toilet. These are his words, not mine, though my words would be similar. The series consistently secures some of the worst rated and unwatched episodes of all time. Some get fewer views than the reruns of the Antique Roadshow. That's your main franchise, is getting fewer watches than a rerun of the Antiques Roadshow. Stylistically woke, Who is a shadow of its former self. Most of the old writers have been replaced with first-time diversity hires. That's not a success story. That doesn't make things better. Get the most qualified people. I don't care what their background is. Get the most qualified people. Bringing in people for a check block is not doing anybody any favors. And now you're going to get your program, which they are part of, canceled. So that's me editorializing again. The result has been there have been no engagement. Remember, these are first-time hires. These aren't sci-fi writers. These are just, do you meet these blocks? Yes. Okay, all right, come on in, write for us. The result has been no engaging episodes to speak of, no characters to hold on to. You don't give a shit about any of these characters. And if you've watched the program, you probably know what I'm talking about. You have the Doctor, who no one cares about anymore. You have Yaz, possibly the least interesting character on television. And you had a couple of other characters who are just no longer on the show, and they brought in a new guy, Dan, who nobody cares about. It's amazing. And never any stakes to make the viewer give a damn. That's what we just talked about. Chibnall's show is consistently awful. An uninspiring and generic production, yet an indignant one, with smug digs towards men in almost every episode, and that's no shit. Storylines abound where the heroes are good, diverse people, and the villains, of course, are homophobic white males, and usually coded as Christian, because Chibnall, I guess we could call it, hates his country, and hates his history. But whatever, I could go on for a long time about Chibnall. I shall not do so. And now we're jumping down to the death of the Doctor. And this is, we've talked about the declining ratings and all this. So the death knell came in Series 12 finale, The Timeless Children, which if you look up on the interwebs, you will find that to be one of the most hated episodes, reviled episodes of the show ever. In it, we learn that the Doctor was never a Time Lord, the time-traveling, regenerating species from which he belongs. Instead, the Doctor was never a humble Time Lord, but sort of a infinite progenitor space messiah. What? So, in Timeless Children, we learn that the Doctor, the previous 13, were not originals, because there were thousands of them in the Timeless Children. They found a little child of color who had this power and kept killing it until they were able to steal the power. That's what that episode was about. So the 13 original Doctors were not original nor important. Instead, the Doctor was a black woman all along, deprived of her true identity by an abusive patriarchy. And just saying the words made me throw up in my mouth a little bit. With one swift strike, almost 60 years of continuity, profits, and fan affections shriveled up into Nothing. Just like the show's ratings. Former revamper to the rescue. So, and let's go back. So, if you've been a fan of Doctor Who, as I have been, and many of you have been, for your entire adult life, they just shit all over that in The Timeless Children. It didn't matter. All that stuff from the first Doctor up through the Capaldi era, it didn't matter. It wasn't unique. It wasn't special. But it was. Former revamper to the rescue. No one is watching. Chibnall and Whittaker are both out. Thank God. Doctor Who is broke and in danger of another cancellation. Until recently, if you asked me who could be saved, I would have told you it needed a miracle. Providence provides. The BBC, now saddled with an unprofitable property, unprofitable, has sold full creative control to a little Welsh production company you may have heard of called Bad Wolf. And the old hand himself, Russell T. Davies, the man that created and ran the show successfully from 2005. Bad Wolf is led by Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, former BBC executives that worked with Davies on Doctor Who and its spin-offs. So, there's no representatives. It's just, you remember, I don't know if you recall, but the first Doctor Who showrunner executive producer back in 1963 was a woman. What? It's insane. It's not insane. That's just, you bring the right people in for the job. So Bad Wolf is a Cardiff-based company. If you remember the good series, the era of Doctor Who, a lot of things happen in Cardiff. Repeatedly proven itself, competently adapting several big intellectual properties, as they do with HBO's His Dark Materials. And the studio is part owner in Sony, of course, which has the new Spider-Man films, which I have enjoyed. As for Davies, he was born for this. This is the article. Davies is humongous Whovian, and in the past, when he was driving the bus, he protected the franchise like a mother grizzly. And now we look at it. And he did. Stephen Moffat, who took over for him, could be a bit overzealous, kind of going off in directions which were outside the scope of Who. And you want to say, well, it's Doctor Who. There is no scope. There is. And Davies was able to reel Moffat in his writing. But then when Moffat took over, though the Matt Smith era was good, the Capaldi era could have been good. Capaldi is the only thing that really saved that, with the exception of a few episodes. Season 8 and 9, I thought were all right. Season 9, I think, had some better episodes, and season 10 was not good, with the exception of Capaldi himself. How to rescue Who? For Who to be rescued, Bad Wolf will have to gather their strength for the media tempest to come. And this is going to be, well, because they will have to make the difficult decision of undoing and jettisoning every ounce of the Chibnall era, every single scrap of canon, lore, and continuity that took place from 2017 to 2022. That means Whittaker's 13th Doctor, all her hatred, and the Timeless Child must be wholly expunged, wiped clean, lest the infection returns. And that's going to be hard in the era of woke, getting rid of all this stuff. It means they're going to take some shots. But what it also, and I can't say for sure, but I say probably means, is that you also get viewership back, which means you make money, which is, aside from entertaining, it's a business. If you're not making money, it doesn't work. You can't produce these things for nothing. And that's how the churning of the industry works. You make good material, people watch good material, you're able to make more good material. You make shit, it doesn't make money, and you don't get to make anything. That's business. That's 101 stuff. I shall close with this. My vision of this, and of course this isn't how it will go, but this is my vision of it. The 12th Doctor is on the floor of the TARDIS, unconscious. He opens his eyes and says, "What an awful dream." And then, boom, he regenerates. And Russell T. Davies moves forward. It's an interesting article. I do hope you read it. There's some very good Who content out there on channels like Nerdrotic and Heel versus Babyface. They are both giant Doctor Who fans and both very, very, very smart. So I recommend you guys take a look at their channels for more Doctor Who content. As for me, this is Roman of the Empire, signing off. Please like and subscribe. Be kind.